on all the platforms provided by Parliament as part of deepening democracy. My name is Supra Obakeng Ramoeletsi Mahuma Pelo. I'm the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations. Our agenda today has got 5 items: opening and welcome, adoption of the agenda, apologies, presentation by the department on the structural bilateral mechanism with Mozambique, and then closure. Can we have a mover for adoption of the agenda, honorable members?
Mr. Chair, it's Honorable Douglas. I move for the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, the son of the first people of South Africa, Honorable Douglas. Do we have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Move to second.
Is it Andisiwe?
It's a yes, Chair. It's Member Kumat. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, your voice is perfect. It means something has happened to in 2026. Congratulations. Wow. What are you doing to your voice? You must intensify it.
No,
Thank you very much, Honorable Kumbacha. And we congratulate you, Honorable Kumbacha, for your election during the Congress of the ANC Youth League as a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League, which was held in Limpopo. So, honorable members, we now have Honorable Kumbacha having been elected in December in Limpopo as a member of the National Executive Committee of the Youth League. She's following on the footsteps of Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Nda, and the rest of them, Oliver Tambo, who led the Youth League from its formation in 1944. So, congratulations, Honorable
Thank you very much,
Kumbacha.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes, just know that the struggle is protracted, it's unpredictable, and we pursue it under conditions that we don't choose. So it's important to adapt, readapt, strategize, re-strategize, change tactics without losing sight on the long-term strategic goal and your shape ideologically. Agenda is adopted. Thanks, honorable members. Lubabalo, can we have apologies?
Good morning, Chair and honorable members. Chairperson, the first apology is from the Minister and Deputy Minister Moraga. They are both attending the extended cabinet lekgotla. And then Deputy Minister, no. Sorry, the Minister is with Deputy Minister Thandi Moraga at the extended cabinet lekgotla. And then Deputy Minister Bottas is on a state visit to Panama. Those are the 3 apologies. Thank you, Chairperson.
Lubabalo. Our next item is presentation by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation on the structure. Oh, I did not go to that icon. That's how I'm not seeing. Let me now go there. Okay, I now have the icon on. Ntate moruti wa rona moruti mešwe ra go amogela ra rona.
Right, so ke itumetse thata go ka kamogela go e monate ke ratang thata.
Ra leboga.
I'm going to ask to be excused. I'll be attending a cabinet lekgotla also somewhere, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Honorable Bishop. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, thanks for that. You'll be released, Honorable, so there's no problem. Structural bilateral mechanisms between South Africa and Mozambique as a neighbor. Today, that structural mechanism, bilateral relationship between South Africa and Mozambique is going to be done by DDGC Okolo. And Tadeso Okolo has been part of the government setup for some time. He is one of the people I regard as a revocrat, having graduated from being a bureaucrat to becoming a revocrat. Tadeso Okolo, the platform is now yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson Rema Humapelo and honorable members of the committee. Compliments of the new year. And before I proceed, may I also register the DG's apology, who's also attending Cabinet Lekgotla, and they have requested me to present to you. And secondly, Honorable Chairperson, our hearts, prayers are with the many families and peoples of Mozambique, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo who were affected by the recent floods. Just yesterday, we received news with mixed feelings that one of the South Africans who got lost has been recovered, and the preparations are on the way to return the remains back home. That underscores, Honorable Chairperson, the need for cooperation between South Africa and Mozambique in the management of water and emergency. And our South African companies, non-governmental organizations, but also the South African National Defence Force responded promptly to a call to assist also Mozambique whilst also tackling the challenges that we were facing, our provinces were facing regarding the floods. The work continues, and SNDF helicopters are continuing to assist Mozambique. But let me proceed with the presentation today. We propose to outline our presentation according to the following 5 themes: background, overview, the PNC itself, key outcomes, and conclusion. Mozambique is strategically located in the Southeast Africa along the Indian Ocean with a coastline of 2,700 kilometers. It is one of South Africa's neighbors, also bordering Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Eswatini. Through its 3 major ports, Maputo, Beira, and Nacala, it serves as a vital gateway between landlocked countries in the region and the global maritime trade. Its 3 ports serve South Africa specifically, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. Mozambique is endowed with massive natural gas reserves, minerals, with its offshore Rovuma being one of the largest gas finds in the world. It also has huge agricultural potential, which is largely untapped, notwithstanding the climate risks and vulnerabilities. It has a population of around 33 million people, majority of them, or a significant part of them, being young people. This is a map representation of Mozambique, which also shows the neighboring countries. In fact, the location of Mozambique, honorable members and chair, it's a strength, but also has underlying vulnerabilities, which we are aware of, climate change, amongst others, but also security challenges. In terms of South Africa and Mozambique relations, I propose to start with our political and diplomatic ties. We all know that the 2 countries enjoy strong fraternal relations which were forged during the common struggle against apartheid and colonialism. These historic ties provide a firm foundation for the establishment of diplomatic relations, making Mozambique one of the strategic partners for South Africa regionally and continentally. I can say without hesitation that we do regard Mozambique as a pivotal state, as an anchor state, both nationally, regionally, continentally, and indeed even globally. And because of its strategic nature, the relations between the 2 countries are coordinated through a structured bilateral mechanism, which is called the Binational Commission, which is expressive of a deep political commitment to strengthen and deepen relations across political, economic, security, and social fields. Just to explain further on the issue of binational commission, we have around 9 binational commissions in Southern Africa, with countries such as Namibia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Lesotho. We will be launching the inaugural binational commission with Mozambique. We have with Tanzania, we have with the DRC. And we have such mechanisms. And outside the Southern Africa region, we have with Nigeria, with Algeria, we have with Ghana. And discussions are advanced to conclude our binational commission with Egypt. These BNC's mechanisms are only for strategic countries where relations straddle across all the four key sectors that I've alluded. Now, with Mozambique, in December, from the 2nd and the 3rd, the 4th session took place between the two countries in Maputo, and the president led the South African delegation with around 14 ministers. A number of senior officials were also there. And on the margins of this binational commission, there was also a business forum in the Inhambane province where companies from South Africa and Mozambique sat, and they were also addressed by our two respective presidents. All in all, honorable members, we have a total number of 76 agreements that have been signed between the two countries, which agreements provide a legal framework for cooperation in various sectors between the two countries. There have also been regular exchanges of high-level visits between the two countries, symbolic, as I said, the fraternity and solidarity which underpin our bilateral relationship. In terms of economic partnership, South Africa is a strategic investor in Mozambique. Currently, there are around 300 South African companies which are registered in Mozambique with investments in the rail sector, the fast-moving consumable goods, energy, financial services, manufacturing, mining and industry, hospitality, agriculture, logistics and transportation, construction, and infrastructure development. In fact, as a result of these, South African companies have established a chamber of business, which is called the South Africa-Mozambique Chamber of Commerce, which is constituted by South African companies in Mozambique. And it has, amongst others, leading South African companies like Standard Bank, Sasol, amongst others. This chamber is playing a strategic role and has also forged a very beneficial relationship with the government of Mozambique, as well as with us here back home in South Africa. It is estimated that more than 500,000, and this is a conservative estimation, jobs have been created with an estimated investment of around 156 billion rands. Mozambique is South Africa's largest trading partner on the African continent and the 4th largest global export market after China, the United States, and Germany. And of course, because of the Maputo port, Mozambique also becomes a critical gateway for trade between South Africa, Southern Africa, and the rest of the world. There are figures that are provided there in terms of our exports in the last 2 years. Still under economic cooperation, our partnership in energy has been one of the strategic pillars for South Africa's cooperation with Mozambique. This partnership has contributed immensely to the two countries' energy security, economic and industrial development, as well as job creation. Mozambique is a cornerstone of South Africa's regional energy security, industrial competitiveness, and low carbon transition agenda. It has its abundant hydropower, natural gas, and renewable energy resources make it a vital partner in advancing South Africa's integrated resource plan, just energy transition, and regional economic development goals under the SADC framework. For decades, honorable members, South Africa's Eskom has relied on Mozambique's Cahora Bassa Dam as a major source of clean electricity, which is essential for achieving stability and reducing gas emissions. And of course, because of climate change and drought, the the water levels at the Cahora Bassa Dam have gone down, prompting us to diversify, and Mozambique to diversify the sources of energy while tackling, obviously, the causes of this climate crisis. Mozambique is a net exporter of energy, as I said, with South Africa being its largest customer, purchasing nearly 80% of its electricity in exports in 2023. Now, in 2004, honorable members, cooperation between the two countries extended to natural gas development and trade following the signing of an agreement on natural gas, which established the legal and regulatory foundation for natural gas development and production, as well as a cross-border gas trade. In 2004, Mozambican government gave Sasol, or earlier before that, gave Sasol the permission to develop gas fields in Pande and Temane, and also establish a pipeline which is called Romco to evacuate that gas from the northern part of Mozambique in Temane, Pande to Secunda in South Africa. And I must say Sasol played an important role there, increasing natural gas share in South Africa's energy mix and generating significant benefits for both South Africa. The Romco gas pipeline I'm talking about is an important asset, strategic asset between Mozambique and South Africa. As I said, it conveys gas from those two gas fields to Secunda and the steel and petrochemical complex in Sasolburg. The South African state-owned entity called iGas is the majority shareholder in this pipeline, Romco. And I understand that this company is very, very profitable. The agreement is scheduled to expire in 2030. And one of the key outcomes, and I'll come back to this, of this PNC was an agreement to initiate discussions on possible extension of this Romco gas line. It takes gas from the two fields, the gas fields, to Secunda, and from Secunda into Johannesburg, into South Gauteng and other areas. And through this, Mozambique gains stable export revenues and the means to develop its domestic market, including power plants and industrial supply. This project generated jobs, more than around 700,000 jobs linked to industrial gas supply. Now, we understand from gas players, from signs that from 2028, we will experience what is called a gas cliff, with natural gas production from the two Sasol gas fields, Pande and Temane, experiencing some declines, depletion of gas. And there is therefore a need to find interim options to ensure the security of supply. As I said, we do rely on gas from Mozambique, particularly from those two gas fields. And consequently, the two governments have commenced negotiations regarding new gas production projects, which we mentioned there, in Central Terica di Maputo, in Central Tremica di Belulani, and the Mohanat Nkua hydraulic. And it's estimated that around 2,000 megawatts potentially of gas will be imported to South Africa should these projects be realized. There is therefore a draft MOU that is being negotiated by the Department of Electricity and Energy and their counterparts in Mozambique. Coming to transport and logistics, bilateral cooperation in logistics has become increasingly vital as both countries seek to enhance regional trade and economic integration, which is exemplified by joint initiatives aimed at improving cross-border transportation, infrastructure, road and rail networks. We all know that the Maputo corridor is an important corridor that was established in the following our democratic breakthrough in South Africa. In fact, the late and founding father of our new nation, the late President Mandela, played an important role in the establishment of the Maputo corridor. The port of Maputo serves as South Africa's cost-effective export route, especially for the provinces of Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng. And it is the flagship infrastructure project in the whole value chain of the Maputo Development Corridor. It enhances faster shipment turnaround, lower bulk transport, and better regional integration. And more importantly, it eases congestion on Durban and Richards Bay. And this particular point, honorable members, is important because in our bilateral discussion with Mozambique, we make a point that the Maputo port, the port of Maputo, should not be seen as a competitor to our Richards Bay, but rather complementary. And that's a discussion that we take to SADC as a region to say, as we develop, we should ensure that we leverage on our competitive strength, but not to kill other existing strategic assets that we have. Now to the BNC itself. The fourth session of the Binational Commission, Honorable Chair, took place, as I said, from the 2nd to the 3rd in December. A very significant and influential delegation from South Africa, from the principals, ministers, and senior officials and business went to Mozambique. As is the practice, the meetings were preceded by the 2 days of senior officials engaging, followed by the ministers meeting their counterparts and culminating in a summit by the two leaders. I must say that already in November, in preparation of these, we received here at DECO 50 senior officials from Mozambique to review progress in various areas of our bilateral cooperation. And therefore, this session in Mozambique of the BNC, led by the president, was one of the successful ones. I said also at the beginning that a business forum was held on the margins in Maputo. So we moved from Maputo and flew to Inhambane province for the business forum. But also the two presidents, our president and President Chapo, also inaugurated a project, one of the strategic projects by Sasol, integrated gas infrastructure facility in Inhambane, which is going to provide gas for domestic cooking inland in Mozambique and also to sell it to South Africa. The deliberations at the BNC were conducted under the umbrella of the following subcommittees, which are pillars or anchors of the BNC: the Political and Diplomatic Committee, Defense and Security, Economic and Social. The BNC reviewed progress achieved since the third session, which was held in 2022, and the two subsequent review sessions, which were held. The objective that we set for that BNC, one was to foster closer political collaboration between the two countries. We are conscious of the fact, honorable members, that South Africa will not be able to project its influence, persuade its partners at regional, multilateral, continental, and global levels, unless it has strong and enduring bilateral relations with all individual African countries. More importantly, it's important that we forge a closer political collaboration with our neighbors and countries on the continent. So that was primary objective number one. Secondly was to strengthen and deepen cooperation by focusing on critical areas such as energy, security, infrastructure, mining, agriculture, and water resource management. We also sought to elevate the levels of investments and trade volumes between the two countries. And lastly, to build and sustain bilateral and regional value chains in the various sectors of our economic cooperation. We also posed a question to ourselves ahead of our visit to find out exactly what does Mozambique want. And we interacted with this, and I can say this without doubt that what Mozambique is, or our understanding is that what Mozambique is seeking for is to increase sovereign equity and operational control in gas infrastructure. They have put firmly on the table their desire to ensure that they control the strategic assets in their country. And in this particular case, we've got pipelines in the case of Romco and others. Secondly, they seeking to extend the operating life of key assets, as I said, central processing facility and others. They also looking at South Africa and not only looking at, South Africa is their key off-taker and want guaranteed access to South African markets, but also expand domestic allocation for local industry. They do not just want to expand, export gas, but also they want to ensure energy security nationally. They are looking at developing the infrastructure that is there to move gas from the north to the southern Mozambique in order to also enable inter-regional integration. At the moment, you find Romco gas evacuating gas from Mozambique to South Africa, but they do need to develop similar infrastructure to connect with the country nationally. And they are also seeking to promote domestic industrialization and deeper supplier development. So what were the key outcomes of this meeting? Firstly, as is the case with all others, we have to, in the presence of the presidents, adopt what we call an agreed minutes, which is an outcome document containing a set of 99 decisions and actions that the various ministries jointly have agreed to implement over the next 12 months. And this time around, we had 99 decisions which cut across various sectors, from politics, diplomacy, to defense and security, to economy, as well as to social. The BNC welcomed and noted that there are 78 agreements that have been signed today, but more importantly directed that by June this year, each of those agreements should have an accompanying action plan for monitoring. But most importantly, the two countries agreed to pursue cooperation in energy. Honorable members, around 2004 and 2010, the Council of Geoscience conducted a geological survey of mineral resources in Mozambique. They indicated that they have completed their report, and the BNC directed that that report should be taken to the next level now, finalize it to the next level so that the two countries can then cooperate in mining. Mozambique has, and from the report by the Council of Geoscience, it has been confirmed that there are huge natural resources in Mozambique. The fourth key outcome, honorable members, was the signing of 6 new agreements, and those agreements are MOU on economic cooperation, MOU in the field of joint development of energy infrastructure, Memorandum of Understanding in the field of transport-related matters, including logistics, agreement on aeronautical and maritime search and rescue coordination, MOU in the field of social development, an agreement on cooperation in higher education and training. And as I said, the there was also a directive that these 78 agreements which were signed should also be audited to determine which of those may not be aligned with the priorities of the two governments. Since the last BNC, the two countries held elections, and they have come up with new priorities, and the direction was that we should ensure that the agreements are aligned to the priorities identified by the two governments. I will unpack 3 of these 6 agreements for emphasis, Honorable Chair. Starting with the one on MOU on economic cooperation. This MOU which was signed SOC will seek to deepen bilateral cooperation and advance regional integration, promote enhanced collaboration across trade, investment, industry, tourism, infrastructure development, and it will seek to stimulate private sector participation through effective implementation. It establishes a joint trade and investment committee to serve as a formal mechanism for resolving market access issues, sharing information on trade and investment opportunities, and coordinating cross-border value chain projects in areas of mutual interest. I must say, at SADC level, the SADC took a decision that we should spare no time in developing cross-border value chains so that we develop as a region. One of, for example, the key decisions that the SADC took, for example, was to conduct a study to determine whether we shouldn't establish an electric batteries in Zambia with the cooperation of DRC, which batteries would be used in the will be bought, the market will be South Africa. So the idea is that as a region to develop, we must grow together, and we must build projects which include 2 or 3 countries where the region and more than 3 countries can benefit. The agreement also strengthens government-to-government cooperation within bilateral and multilateral frameworks at the AfCFTA, with the aim of forging harmonized, mutually beneficial partnership for trade, industrialization, project facilitation, and infrastructure development. And the MOU also presents an opportunity for South African private sector to engage in joint ventures, cross-border investment, capacity building initiatives that will promote technology transfer, job creation, and sustainable growth and development. Secondly, let me unpack the MOU in the field of joint development of energy infrastructure. This agreement will facilitate, 1, the extension of the ROMCO agreement. The gas pipeline that was established is managed by a company with the shareholding of South Africa, Sasol, and Mozambique, the state-owned company owned by Mozambique. This agreement is due to expire in 2030, and it's of strategic importance to South Africa and to Mozambique that it be extended beyond 2030. I'm told that this company is one of the most profitable company cross-border or joint bilateral company established by South Africa and Mozambique. And it is the same asset that Mozambique is seeking to extend, not only to evacuate gas from Mozambique to South Africa, but also to link up with other gas fields in Mozambique and to supply much needed gas to all the areas in Mozambique. It also enables the evacuation or provision of gas to power project in Maputo to supply power to South Africa. And thirdly, it encourages or envisages in the joint exploration and production of natural gas in the northern part of Mozambique to avert gas cliff, which I refer to, with the participation of South African companies. So Mozambique is saying, okay, fine, the 2 gas fields which are now managed by Sasol, gas is getting depleted, but there are many other areas for development, and they've invited South Africa to participate in the development of some of the new ones, in particular the one called in Mpanda Nguna, hydropower. And participation could be in the form of financing, equity stake, and electricity takeoff. The last MOU that I request I unpack a bit relates to the MOU in the field of transport related matters. It facilitates joint collaboration in port investment and terminal operations. Yes, you have the port of Maputo. It's very strategic, and we understand that the port is being modernized. It's being developed further. More cargo is now going to this port, assisting with congestion in Richards Bay, as I said. But we're looking at the possibility of also partnering with Mozambique in the port of Maputo, and discussions are going on as provided for in the MOU. It also facilitates joint collaboration to improve rail infrastructure in Mozambique to enable seamless movement of cargo and reduce transit times to the ports. Mozambique has a very ambitious program to renew its rail infrastructure, acquire new trains, refurbish the existing one. We understand that they have requirements of more than 4,000, and South African companies, particularly Transnet, are keen to participate in the modernization of the rail sector in Mozambique. And cooperation in supply and maintenance of rolling stock, as well as the maintenance of gas pipelines. Transnet has said we want to be Mozambique's partner of choice when it comes to the supply and maintenance of rolling stock, while obviously respecting their choices and procurement procedures. But South Africa, we believe, has the capacity and the means to be favorably considered. Also under this agreement, Mozambique has an ambitious program to launch and renovate the Rashia-Gacha port of entry, which is a port between South Africa and connecting South Africa and Mozambique. In fact, in December, our Minister of Transport joined her counterpart there in order to launch some of the phases in the development. The agreement also provides for South Africa's participation in a corridor which is very strategic to Mozambique, the Mapihani-Pafuri Development Corridor, which is an infrastructure project that will enhance the development of a road rail corridor connecting the Limpopo railway line to Chikwalakwala and the deep water port of Velangula, and thus to increase the capacity to access seaport services and facility to move commodities across South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and other Southern African countries. So the government of Mozambique wishes to develop this corridor and has thus invited South Africa to participate in it. So in conclusion, honorable members, the South African delegation was satisfied with the outcomes achieved during this visit, particularly in the fields of energy, transport and logistics, and economic cooperation. Secondly, the agreements that were signed were largely focused on deepening economic partnerships, and discussions focused on programs and projects. In the coming weeks and months, we will be paying more attention in coordinating the effective implementation of all these agreements. The active participation in the PNC of our state-owned enterprises like Transnet, Central Energy Fund, and our development financing institutions such as DBSA and NDC and IDC contributed immensely to the quality of the outcomes of this. And talking about our development finance institutions, I must say that over the years, we have forged a very strong relationship with them in order to ensure that wherever they go, they are guided fully by government. And I'm pleased to share this information that, for example, the South African, the DBSA, IDC, and the Export Credit Insurance Corporation of South Africa, which is also our own SOE, have all extended a combined total coverage of 153 billion rands to Mozambique. For example, the IDC has committed around 46 billion to Mozambique, making Mozambique its largest market by exposure on the continent. DBSA has committed an amount of more than 70 billion for projects while in Mozambique, while the ACIC has a total insurance coverage of 2.7 billion and 34 billion rands for new projects. These are what our DFIs have put to pledge to Mozambique. I thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Honorable members, there's the presentation by DDG Siokolo on behalf of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. We can now engage with the presentation, and we will start with Honorable Nobile Nhlongo.
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. Our staff members from DERCO is led by the DTG and our staff members of the Portfolio Committee. To everybody here. We hope we are going to have a good year and we'll be healthy and safe, all of us, as we engage in this year, which is going to be a very hectic year of local government elections for all of us. I hope we all have a good year and we are all well rested to continue with our work as parliamentarians. Chair, I must first pass our sincere condolences to the people who lost their lives, their properties in the recent floods in Mozambique, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo. You know, Chairperson, it has always been like this. Whenever there's floods in Mozambique, Mpumalanga primarily gets affected, especially the Nkomazi municipality area. Perhaps it's about time we learn to be proactive. A government learns to be proactive and have our emergency being on standby each time there's flood weather warnings in Mozambique, especially during summer and spring seasons. Because I can tell you for free, Chair, the people of Mpumalanga, especially in Nkomazi, they know during December, January, and February, whenever there's rain in Mozambique, it spells disaster for them because of the close proximity to Mozambique. It has become a norm. The people there have, it has been normalized that there will always be problems, especially with the low-lying bridges. Some houses will be destroyed in the rain. So maybe it's about time that government looks at this and how to better be proactive in curbing these challenges. We know climate change is a global problem. It's not only a problem of South Africa, it's our problem altogether. But we must find better ways of ensuring that our people are kept safe during this season. Now, Chair, our strategic, diplomatic and trade relations with Mozambique is vital for trade for South Africa, Southern Africa, and the rest of the world due to the Maputo corridor. Now, Mozambique is our biggest trading partner on the African continent. As such, this relationship, Chair, we should do everything to harness it and to grow it in order to increase trade between the two countries and in order to see stability between the two countries. I would have been much interested, Chair, to also be given, even if it's at a high-level report on SADC mission in Mozambique, SAMIM. I might say, Chair, I'm quite disappointed that this presentation does not highlight the crisis of Cabo Delgado, of which you know Cabo Delgado is the most mineral-rich province in Mozambique, holding vast globally significant deposits of liquefied natural gas, high quality of rubies and graphite. So I would have been interested to hear our role in SAMIM as South Africa and how what is and how we think if there will be stability in Cabo Delgado could largely benefit our trade in South Africa, could largely benefit energy security for South Africa, could mean there's energy security for decades to come with the liquefied natural gas that was discovered in Cabo Delgado and the insurgents that has been in place since 2017. Che, over 1 million people have fled their homes in Cabo Delgado, thousands killed, and there's reports, and we don't get, this report does not highlight or speak to that effect, how this has a potential to either affect negatively our diplomatic relations with Mozambique and the role South Africa plays in SAMIM. It would have been very interesting to hear that, Chair, as part of the presentation by Derko, which is information they've got access. It's at their disposal. I believe they've got that information. I would have loved to hear that part. We'll not only not look at Mozambique and our trade, but also let's look at the crisis that is right at our doorstep. Cabo Delgado is too close to home for comfort, Chair. When over 1 million people are displaced, where are they going to run to? It's only natural that the first stop they make is in South Africa because of our close proximity to Mozambique. So I would have wanted Derko to also look at that aspect when they look at our overview relationship with Mozambique and not hide the fact or pretend that all is good and well when as there's a crisis in Mozambique. The world has been silent about Cabo Delgado for too long. I don't think we, as well as South Africa, ought to be silent when we are participating in SAMIM, and we've had a big role to play. And Derko does not highlight the important role of South Africa in resolving the insurgents in Cabo Delgado. And another important thing I expected and how our role as South Africa on the 2024 elections of Mozambique that was disputed by opposition parties and led to massive protests that left hundreds of people killed by the military and the police in Mozambique. Instability in Mozambique has a direct impact on our country. When there's instability, we are the first people to feel it in South Africa. And our government, in terms of resources and any other aspect, our people, ordinary citizens, get to feel any instability that happens in Mozambique. In future, Chair, when we get reports when we look at reports on the relations we have with the countries, let's look at the statistics in terms of immigration between the two countries. It would have been very nice to see how many nationals from Mozambique are living and working in South Africa, and how many South Africans are living and working in Mozambique as part of this report, which is something that obviously is something we can get from Home Affairs. It would have also been very important because I hear DDG highlights the issue of the implementation of the one-stop border concept in the Maputo corridor. It would have been nice to have Home Affairs here today in this meeting with us. It doesn't have to be the minister, even if it's the DG, a senior official coming to give us a report. How far are they with this one border concept in upgrading the Maputo corridor, Chair? It would have been very nice to also get a report on how Home Affairs plans in future to curb the long queues that our people are subjected to at the Libombo border post during the festive season, and how there's traffic congestion on the N4 immediately when you pass Malelane as you approach Nkomati Port and the Libombo border post. It would have been very interesting to get that information from Home Affairs to keep us abreast with these issues. How are they planning to curb the long queues during the next coming festive season? Because it becomes a frustrating exercise. Sometimes it takes more than 48 hours to cross the border from South Africa to the Mozambican side during the festive season. Again, to cross the border to enter South Africa during January, immediately after the New Year. It becomes an exhausting exercise, and it also tends to turn away tourists from wanting to travel during the festive season. As you will know, Chair, tourism is very high during the festive season. People have bonus, people will ordinarily want to travel during the festive season, but it becomes a nightmare to cross the Libombo border post during the festive season. So I think in future, Chair, when we have these kind of reports, let us try by all means to get Home Affairs, as they've got a very strategic role to play in how we are implementing our trade relations with other countries and how they manage our border post, whether it's by ocean, by sea, by road. So I would have loved to hear that, Chair. And really, I'm pleading, Chair, if it is possible that this report can be brought back with that aspect of Home Affairs and that aspect of Cabo Delgado, the insurgents in Cabo Delgado and our role in Samim, and how we think we can leverage from a stable Cabo Delgado, because this liquefied gas in Cabo Delgado can be really strategic to secure our energy as South Africa, to secure future energy generation in South Africa and the rest of this of SADC region, if there can just be stability in Cabo Delgado. And I think it will really grow the economy, not only of Mozambique, but of the entire SADC region, that we can also leverage from. When the economy grows in SADC, it means there's more business for us, there's more customers for us, there's more things we can do as SADC region. So I'm pleading with with yourself, Chair, and the rest of the committee members, that can this report serve again with those aspects being included, Chair. Thank you very much. I'll leave it here for now.
Thanks, Honorable Ngobile. Ntate Murutineshe will now take you, because you did present your apology that you are going to the cabinet. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I want to ask 3 short questions. The first one has to do with disasters that we always see in Mozambique when there are floods. And obviously, we are also affected as close neighbors to Mozambique. So my question has to do with the collaboration whenever there are floods and there are disasters. What is being done to ensure that there is quick response to assist each other as neighbors during disasters? And when assistance is given, in what form is it given, or in which areas does assistance include? Is there assistance following mainly on transporting people from flooded areas, as we have seen, even the SNDF assisting with helicopters? And what about rebuilding when infrastructure has been destroyed? Are there any agreements that have been made of how to assist one another? Because many times after floods, we see flooded places or infrastructure that has been destroyed being unattended for a long time. So quick responses. Are there any plans to improve on responses so that they can be quicker? So that if there are bridges that have been destroyed, that we see a quicker response from both sides as good neighbors. And the second question has to do with cross-border criminal activity. We know that from South Africa's side, one of the challenges, big challenges, is the illegal smuggling of cars, particularly buggies, that are stolen in South Africa into Mozambique. How is this problem dealt with by both sides, particularly from the Mozambique side? Because we know that South Africa cannot solve this problem without the assistance of their Mozambique counterparts. What I want to know that as the statistics that are kept, are we winning the war against the cross-border smuggling of cars out of South Africa, or how are we doing? Is there anything that is done to measure whether we're winning this war or we are losing it? And Are there figures that we can be presented later on to be shown that in 2024, this was the case, 25, now we are into 26, and what happened during the Christmas period? And then the last one for now, we heard that Mozambique has massive deposits of gas. How is our country, South Africa, taking advantage of that? Because if they have massive deposits, I think we should be benefiting the most from them. And linked to this question, I would want to know, besides Mozambique, where are we getting gas from? And is Mozambique the largest provider of gas, or what are the relevant facts? And if Mozambique is not the largest provider or supplier, then can we be given the reason why? Because of their proximity, they should be our main supplier of gas. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much for coming to your meeting of cabinet. Honorable Wesley Douglas.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to wish you all well for this year and wish all the members of the committee and the staff and DOCO all the well for 2026. And I, as usual, greet you all in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And in the language of my people, the Khoisan San First Nation peoples, I greet you all and say, like says, Chairperson, let me begin by thanking the DDG and the presenter from DOCO for the presentation. But before I engage the substance of today's presentation, allow me to express our deep sympathy and solidarity with all communities affected by the recent floods in Mozambique, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo, and are severely affected by climate-related disasters, and all those who lost their lives and lost loved ones. These events remind us that ordinary people always pay the highest price for policy failure, for weak planning and global neglect. In an age of climate crisis, Mr. Chair, international cooperation must move beyond words and become a tool for protection, resilience, and survival. Mr. Chair, also just on the international relations, before I go into the substance, we also express our solidarity with the people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And we call for the immediate and unconditional release of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. Whatever political differences exist globally, the continued use of economic warfare, sanctions, and coercive diplomacy against sovereign states undermines international law and endangers global peace. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the important thing from this presentation that we need to take away is that not enough has been done to bring this benefit home. You know, we've passed an austerity budget, and at home, essential services are being cut, communities are under strain, and departments are being told to do more with less. In that context, DOCO cannot function as a ceremonial or protocol-driven department as it was in the past. It must operate as a strategic, economic, and security instrument of state. Mr. Chair, when you look at this presentation, we see great big numbers, you know, and we see energy cooperation between ourselves and Mozambique, but it's not just merely an economic issue. It is a national security issue. Our reliance on cross-border energy infrastructure means instability, conflict, or mismanagement elsewhere directly affects South African households and industries. This committee must therefore insist on a clear risk mitigation strategy from DOCO. And we must make sure that there's a cross-department cooperation between Home Affairs, DOCO, and SANDF for things like infrastructure protection and long-term planning that prioritizes national and regional security. We see what's happening in Cabo Delgado, and the reality is that insurgency is not over, it's not done. And we don't have the military might, the military strength to be able to stop them if they want to come further south, Mr. Chair, or they want to destroy the gas projects or make things bad for us. We see that the presentation deck highlights 76 agreements signed to date, and these say monitoring commitments, and it will happen. But how many of these 76 agreements are operational versus dormant? Which agreements have budgets, timelines, KPIs, and responsible entities to implement them? We don't have that information in this presentation. What is the implementation rate by percentage, and what is the value unlocked in terms of rand in billions for South Africa, not just for Mozambique? Is that 500,000 jobs that we have there, is it jobs for us here in South Africa, or is it jobs that we created in Mozambique? Because we also know that there are secondary economies and companies that are benefiting from that. But the minute the security situation goes up, then we have to step in as government and we have to pay for the lack or for the problems that we find there. We see that the trade is in South Africa's favor, but why isn't South Africa extracting more development outcomes from these projects? Why are we not locking in local procurement for South African SMEs, especially black-colored Khoisan and Indian entrepreneurs for corridor projects, port logistics, and all those kind of things, Mr. Chair? There's so much opportunities to be had. Rail upgrades, border services, and energy infrastructure. Why is there no explicit beneficiation industrialization plan tied to the relationship for us to be able to say, okay, these kids here in Soweto, they have a project that's tied to the energy corridor. These kids in the Cape Flats, colored kids on the Cape Flats, there's opportunities for them. These Indian kids in Durban, there's opportunity for them for Mozambique, in Mpumalanga, in Limpopo. Where is the job creation opportunities for our people out of this? It doesn't help us just saying that we have 76 agreements, but it only benefits white monopoly capital and it only benefits other countries and their needs without addressing our own needs, Mr. Chair. When we look at where we are going with this relationship, Mr. Chair, we have to ask ourselves serious questions about whether this thing has been stalled for a purpose or whether there is now going to be actual physical benefits to our people, real investments, real cost-saving targets. But right now, it doesn't seem that that's in place. I want to agree with some of my colleagues that have spoken before me that we need to look at the issues of home affairs, of border security, border safety. We need to look at issues of monitoring who comes in, who goes out, how cars come in, cars go out. And if the trade is heavily in SA's favor, what is the plan to ensure that this translates into jobs at home, local procurement, and SME access? So, Mr. Chair, I think that there's a lot to be added to this presentation. We need more information. We need to know what humanitarian and economic stabilization support is being coordinated to reduce push factors that drive irregular migration and insecurity. Mr. Chair, I think for me, the fact is this is our neighbor. And as our neighbor, everything that happens there affects us. And yes, it sounds positive that they're the fourth largest trade partner, etc., etc., etc. Everything sounds positive, but we are not seeing that on the ground. And the people are not seeing the benefits in the townships. The people are not seeing houses come from this, jobs come from this, food come from this, careers come from this. So I'd like to see that line much more clearly defined for us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Douglas. Honorable Rian Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me just thank the DDG for the presentation and extend my compliments of the new year to everyone on the meeting. I trust that 2026 will be peaceful and prosperous. Chair, I want to just begin with agreeing with my colleagues, the Honorable Mhlongo and the Honorable Douglas, more broadly about the discussion, which I think the most pertinent discussion, and I think most of us are touching on this here, is the role of Mozambique in greater regional stability in the Southern African development community and certainly Southern Africa more broadly. Because it's all fine and well for South Africa to have increasing bilateral trade agreements with Mozambique to deepen our diplomatic ties with our neighbor. But it will all be for nil, really, if the stability of Mozambique is under threat, and it is, unfortunately. I think we need to call a spade here. Honorable Mhlongo has mentioned at length the risk of the Cabo Delgado region, the infiltration of terrorist cells in northern Mozambique, which are encroaching further south towards the South African border, and we know that would carry dire implications for the regional security of Southern Africa and for South Africa at large. But we also need to look, I think, at South Africa's role in stabilizing Mozambique or using diplomacy to push for greater stability in Mozambique, because we have to protect South Africa's interests as a result of that. And there are several threats, I think, to the stability in Mozambique that need to be addressed. We've spoken about the floods. We know that global warming and climate change are definitely affecting the weather patterns in Southern Africa. We've experienced both El Nino and La Nina periods where we've had extreme weather events, either droughts or heavy rains, which have led to flooding, which has happened most recently up in the northeastern part of our country, including Mozambique. But how are we actually future-proofing the relationship with Mozambique in that regard? So I know that the African Renaissance Fund has got a mandate that deals specifically with climate change and assisting with humanitarian aid in the event of disasters linked to climate change. But I do think that South Africa needs to be far more proactive instead of reactive in this regard. We need to look at how South Africa can cooperate with Mozambique to future-proof crops, for example, against climate change, speaking, to food security, and then more broadly, just to the security of lives and livelihoods in terms of freak weather events like floods or cyclones, which happen along the coastline, the eastern coastline as well, and droughts, I think, which we can expect to experience more frequently going forward. And what South Africa's role is using perhaps the African Renaissance Fund or in conjunction with other government departments and ministries to protect South Africa's interests by virtue of stabilizing Mozambique and future-proofing Mozambique against these disasters, because I think it's incredibly important for us to make sure that if we are reliant on the ports of Maputo, for example, for exports and imports into Southern Africa, that port cannot be jeopardized by freak weather events, nor can the main arterial routes, the roadways, the freight railway lines, if those still exist. I'm not sure if they've fallen apart by now, certainly on the South African side. But if one of those arterial routes succumbs to a freak weather event, it has a knock-on effect in terms of trade on the rest of the region. And this is something that we need to be taking far more seriously. We keep talking about the Africa Free Trade, Free Continental Trade, agreement, but we're not talking about the risks to free trade and the risks to the free movement of goods in Southern Africa. And I think if we're looking at the environment and environmental disasters, we need to look at future-proofing our countries here in South Africa and regionally against environmental disasters. But moving on from that, Chair, I think the bigger points, and maybe the elephant in the room here that we're not discussing, is the political stability of Mozambique. Because it's all fine and well for South Africa to deepen its investment in Mozambique, but all of that goes up in flames should Mozambique erupt into revolution, for example. The recent elections that were held in Mozambique in 2024 were mired by rank irregularities and deep concerns. We saw reports of Frelimo or certain political parties making use of state resources, including the military and security services, to suppress opposition parties and to suppress opposition voters and suppress even civilians in many cases in the streets of Maputo. And it seems as if that has been conveniently forgotten, the fact that the election was declared by many independent observers as being fraudulent. And it seems as if South Africa is just going along and acting as if nothing really has happened there. And, if we cannot, as a constitutional democracy, and as the custodians of our own values in the Constitution, hold up and advance democracy in our own region, in neighboring countries, and Zimbabwe is the best example, it causes untold instability for South Africa as a knock-on effect. It creates migration crises. It creates trade imbalances. It poses a direct national security risk to South Africa. And we cannot afford to have more countries like Mozambique go the same way as Zimbabwe. And so I really think that we need to look more broadly at using diplomacy to address these issues with our neighboring countries, either through the Southern African Development Community or more broadly through the African Union. But Mozambique is our neighbor, so it's not some far-flung country on the other side of the world or in a different hemisphere where we can talk about it in theory, but not really have to deal with the real-life consequences. If Mozambique falls, or if political instability causes problems or causes uncertainty for South African trade and investment, that poses a direct consequence for us that we need to be very, very aware of. So my question, Chair, to the DDG and perhaps any other members of the ministry or the department on the meeting is, what is South Africa's approach to the growing political instability in Mozambique? Is it a concern? Is it something that we are taking seriously? Because it underpins every single thing that has been discussed on this presentation. And until we address that, it is going to be the root cause and the undermining of all of our efforts in terms of bilateral trade and diplomacy with Mozambique going forward. So I would really like to hear from the department on that matter. Thank you.
Bye, thank you, Honorable Smith. Bye, thank you. Honorable Kumbaka.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to yourself, all honorable members present in the session, and our team from DERCO. Let me also first extend my condolences to all those who lost their lives in the disaster in Mozambique, and also just wish all the honorable members a joyous 2026. Chair, mine is very short. I think I've been partially covered by some members. But I think even with the key outcomes which have been outlined, I think DERCO needs to have a formula, or rather know how often progress will be reported to us in Parliament on these key outcomes that they've outlined. I think we must be very clear on that in terms of how often will progress be reported to this portfolio committee. And, and then also just another one, Chair. I think I've been partially covered by the previous colleagues, but I want to check what is the current security assessment in Cabo Delgado and how sustainable are the gains made so far? And then, what role can, even with these key outcomes they've put, what role can, economic inclusion play in preventing this extremism that we are witnessing? Yeah, I think that's all from my side, Chair. Thank you very much.
Dabula Landi, Honorable Kumbaka, thank you very much. That is all from my side. It's just one thing. We know that South Africa's economy is like an Irish coffee. We've got the most advanced, well-organized, well-oiled, which constitutes the core pillar of South Africa's macro economic dynamics. And then the bottom part of the Irish coffee includes the micro. In that micro, that's where you find your SMMEs and so on. So what I want to check is that Chamber of Commerce, South Africa Mozambique Chamber of Commerce, does it include both? And I will suggest that if it doesn't, we may have to have a discussion between us and DTIC so that we can establish the Chamber of Commerce, which are a true reflection of the South Africa's economic situation. Actually, South Africa's economy is at 3 levels. We have the highest, which is the most advanced participants in the economy. Then there's in the middle. Then there's the bottom. And at the bottom, that's where you find people who are really at the bottom. They are not even SMMEs. who are selling mangoes across the board, acha, juices, vegetables, and so on, milk, some of the consumables. So I will suggest that if it doesn't exist at the 3 levels, because the discussions in those meetings can be sometimes at a very high level, where if you are in the trade of a small trade of eggs, you will not be able to feature in the high discussions that discuss banking, transactions, and mining, energy, and IT services. Yeah, that's the only issue from my side, Ntate Sokolo. And thanks for the presentation. And honorable members, thanks for your engagement. Over to you, Ntate Sokolo.
Thank you, Honorable Chair Rema Umapelo, and members of the committee. And thank you for the questions and the comments. We've noted the comments, and I would attempt to respond to some of the specific questions. The issue, and allow me to start with the issue of Cabo Delgado. It is of concern to South Africa. It is of concern to the region, to SADC, and to the African continent and the international community. And it is also true that the largest reserves of natural gas are concentrated in that part of the world. Secondly, I agree with members that Mozambique is close to South Africa. Peace and stability of Mozambique has got major implication for South Africa, for the national security of South Africa. And it is for this reason that in 2021, South Africa positively supported the deployment of the SAMIM mission in that country at the request of the government of Mozambique. The SAMIM deployment SADC mission lasted for until 2024, when the government of Mozambique released SAMIM from that decision. So SADC does also work on the basis of a request from its member states to assist, but it also does consider developments of which threaten regional peace and security. But primarily we depend on the requests that come from Mozambique. South Africa was part of the deployment to Mozambique, and certain successes were recorded during the deployment in that part of the world. For example, we began to see some of the internally displaced persons being able to return. We saw the humanitarian support or aid being provided to the communities in Mozambique. And we saw some of the territories which were taken over or infested by the insurgents being reclaimed. The SADC was very clear from the very beginning that our intervention complements or seek to create space for a long-lasting solution to a problem in any country where we intervene. So at SADC level, we continue to receive reports or indications from Mozambique, which are being processed internally within SADC, and in particular through the organ on politics, defense, and security. Bilaterally, we do discuss Cabo Delgado, do receive information through various channels on the security situation security situation in Cabo Delgado. So discussions are ongoing bilaterally between the two governments, exchange of information between the two governments, as well as within the SADC community. At the moment, as honorable members are aware, Mozambique has a bilateral deployment agreement with a country on the continent. And they are the only one currently who are deployed in Mozambique at the request of the government of Mozambique. That's all I can say at this stage about the situation in Cabo Delgado. The other question that was was raised relates to the floods. A number of decisions, honorable members, during the BNC, which I do not include here, but related to cooperation in water, management of water. There's a joint commission established between Mozambique and South Africa on the management of water resources, and I can provide honorable members with more information. What the BNC directed the relevant department to do is to reactivate those joint commissions to ensure that they work more effectively. At the regional level, a decision was taken to establish a center by SADC, which is called SHOCK, Emergency Humanitarian Center. It is called officially SADC Humanitarian and Emergency Operations Center, and it is located in Mozambique. Its mandate is to coordinate disaster preparedness and response in Southern Africa. When we met with Mozambique during the PNC in South Africa, we did underscore the urgency of ensuring that that center is operationalized as soon as possible. And yesterday, Minister Lamola had a meeting with the Executive Secretary of SADC, Mr. Elias Mahosi, and the issue of the operationalization of SHOCK, which is based in Mozambique, was discussed. And as you are aware, South Africa is the interim chair of SADC until August, as well as a substantive chair from August. We, Minister, directed that during our chairship, we will work with SADC and Mozambique to ensure that this center is operationalized to be able to not to only provide support and coordinate emergency and humanitarian challenge assistance, but also to ensure that it's ready to support the entire region. So bilaterally, we've got the joint water commissions. The PNC directed that they be reactivated, and at the regional level, we have SHOCK. SHOCK is still a new baby, and the directive is that it should be operationalized to be able to effectively support member states in all those areas. As I said from the beginning, honorable members, there are indicators we use in assessing a relationship between us and our partners, not only in SADC, but in outside as well. Trade is one of them. We work with our partners, mainly DTIC, provincial agencies, to open up markets for our products. That's a key indicator we use, and working with DTIC targets are made. I indicated at the beginning that Mozambique is the #1 trade partner. We will sustain these levels. But Honorable Chair, Mr. Mahumapele said, what about small and emerging exporters? That is the matter that we are discussing with DTIC to ensure that in these big positive figures and statistics, small companies are not left behind. And that's a matter that we will continue to raise with our DTIC. And I believe they are working with export councils nationally who are responsible for ensuring that they support our drive to export products to different markets. I understand that DTIC has developed a global export strategy, and that strategy takes into consideration the issue of SMEC. So we have big numbers with Mozambique, satisfactory numbers. What we need to look at are the qualitative aspect of them. Is the nature, diversification of products. Secondly, is the issue of SME. And I take that and we'll discuss with our partners, mainly the Department of Trade and Industry, and I believe as well as the Department of Small and Business Development. Africa branch, when it comes to investments, we accompany our companies onto the continent with a hope and belief that the profits that they make will be repatriated back to the country to support our national development priorities. There is an appreciable number of South African companies in Mozambique. They are there because through diplomacy, regulatory frameworks have been negotiated between South Africa and Mozambique. That's SADECO's contribution, working in partnership with its various departments. Are our companies reasonably protected? Issues of protection of investments, issues of avoidance of double taxation, regulatory challenges that they experience. And what I did, and I apologize, I did not include, was also to highlight some of the challenges that our companies are experiencing in various jurisdictions. And many times they come to DECO on a regular basis for us to intervene on issues of repatriation of their profits, as well as lack of foreign currency for them to take it back. These are issues that as DECO, through our missions, we continue to do. The higher number of South African companies in the markets attracts the higher number of challenges, which we continue to manage on a daily basis. So the second indicator is investments. When it comes to Mozambique, we have got a number of companies, big companies, and the chamber, since its establishment and launch, it was now recently launched last year during the visit of the president. They are helping us to collate information, and Honorable Chairperson, the chairperson of the Mozambique Chamber of Commerce lives here in South Africa, goes to Mozambique regularly. The committee may also want to engage with them so that as part of their program, they should ensure that they do not leave SMMEs behind. So we will take this relationship to a higher level, begin to ask qualitative questions which are linked to our transformation agenda in our country. So we are satisfied that in the field of investments, a lot has happened between the two, and through our diplomatic efforts, working closely with DTIC and other departments, we are making a progress. Thirdly, is a question of tourism. We go out there to promote South Africa as a tourist destination of choice. And the tourism, what I didn't indicate here, is that many African countries say South Africa as a touristic place for them. We do marketing there. And fourthly, our DFIs seek to be the lender of first resort in big infrastructure projects. I shared figures here, and I said combined IDC, DBSA, and Export Insurance Corporation Company, the total value of the coverage to Mozambique regarding current and pledges made goes to 153 billion. We want these DFIs, which are state-owned. South Africa is a major, government of South Africa owns these DFIs. We want them to be the lenders of first resort on the African continent. We find, Honorable Chair and members, the many partners from the East, UAE, Dubai, having well-resourced sovereign funds, which are competing with DFIs to fund projects. Because those people who fund infrastructure projects, they do have some leverage as well. And if our DFIs are able to put their foot into that, become lenders, then that might open opportunities for South African companies to be the ones to participate. Of course, national departments in South Africa should then play their part in assisting in building capacity for small companies, whether construction or those who are in the manufacturing industries, to be able to participate actively in the bids on the African continent, because they are not only competing with national companies, but they'll be competing with companies from Turkey, companies from China, companies from UAE, Qatar, and so forth. And so this is what we are doing, and we will continue to do so. So those agreements, honorable members, which were signed now during the BNC, will seek to facilitate for South African companies to participate in specific sectors. Now, energy security is key. The Mozambique is the largest supplier of gas, and I will get correct statistics from the Department from the relevant state-owned entities on the exact quantities of gas that is imported from Mozambique. But it's not only a gas trade. We are also an investor in Mozambique, as I said, through Sasol. And Sasol would not have been able to exploit those two gas fields if government of the Republic did not sign an MOU, government to government, to facilitate that transaction. And so there's a very strong partnership between South Africa and Mozambique. And those two gas fields were as a result of the direct effort led by government. And it is continuing. As I said, honorable members, we are at a point where those two gas fields are depleting. And during this BNC, discussions ensued, which were solidified with an MOU, to then say, now that these gas fields are expiring, will be coming to an end, what next? An MOU was signed, where the Mozambican government identified certain potential gas projects and say, South Africa negotiate. Those discussions are continuing. And hopefully next year, when we engage again, we'll be able to get information and we'll monitor from the relevant department SOEs on progress in South Africa's acquiring stake. Because obviously it will depend on whether it makes sense commercially. The Central Energy Fund is leading efforts as well through its subsidiaries like iGas, which is on the side of gas trading and gas infrastructure. The Romco Pty company, which manages this gas infrastructure from northern Mozambique to South Africa, is owned by the government of Mozambique and government of South Africa with Sasol as a shareholder. It's expiring in 2030. The MOU that was signed now during the BNC provides for the commencement of negotiations so that we can continue to be a shareholder in that, because otherwise the current agreement says when this thing ends in 2030, the asset will revert back to the government of Mozambique. And as I said, it is the most profitable joint venture between South Africa and Mozambique in gas infrastructure. And Mozambique has indicated that we not only want to be in the partnership of trading in gas, but we also want South Africa to continue to be investor in the development of others. There's competition, obviously, honorable members. You find big other companies like Total and others who are active in Mozambique. What we are seeking to do is to secure the South African slice or portion. And of course, we will continue to convey this message to departments that are leading the negotiations to ensure that they do not leave South African South African small companies behind. Particularly, they need to respond to the transformation challenges that South Africa is dealing with. There was a question, honorable members, about political stability in the light of the recent protests after the elections. SADC has an organ, which is called an Organ on Peace, Defense and Security, Politics, Defense and Security. SADC has as one of its mandate the responsibility to ensure that there is democracy, governance in the region. And it does so in various ways. And one way is to support electoral democracy and ensure that the electoral outcomes, the quality of electoral outcomes is improved. What do? They deploy missions to go and observe elections. And after those elections, they release a report to the member states, the concerned member state. And that report assesses various aspects. It is not punitive. It is intended to serve as a guide to a member state on what it should do to improve. Mozambique was a pointed case. There was an electoral observation mission that was sent by SADC, the same way as the AU did. A report was released, but there is a detailed one that is submitted also to a member state that looks at the situation leading up to the elections, participation of women, of youth, whether there was a democratic space created for everyone to participate. They give a member state that report, and they also, more importantly, issues a set of recommendations. And halfway through, they go back. SADC goes back to a member state to say, let's check how far you went in terms of implementing some of the recommendations. And throughout the year, they are also supported to improve that. That is one instrument through which SADC as a region support the promotion of democracy in the region, and Mozambique is not an exception. We are very mindful of the fact that no member state should be seen as directly interfering in the domestic affairs. And through SADC, which is a regional mechanism led by member states, we member states have surrendered somehow that aspect to this body to support them, to be honest and frank about the challenges, and to commend them. When we had our own elections here in South Africa, those elections were observed by SADC. SADC left the IEC and the government of South Africa with its observation on progress, good progress, but also on areas that need to be improved. And halfway through, SADC will come back to South Africa and say, South Africa, we issued this report. How far have you progressed in dealing with this issue? SADC also had another mediation capacity. For example, in the event of a conflict, SADC does deploy the panel of the elders, supported by the mediation reference group, who are mediators who are available to member states to assist in facilitating dialogue. For example, on the 17th of December, honorable members, SADC had an extraordinary summit on Madagascar, took a decision to deploy the panel of the elders to go and engage with the stakeholders in Madagascar on what they plan to do or should do to restore Madagascar to constitutional democracy. That panel of the elders has been given a directive to be in Madagascar, for example, and to finalize their report by the end of March. So that is a regional mechanism that is at the disposal of member states to support democracy, to support peace, and efforts are led by its organ on peace and democracy. And that's the context in which we do engage Mozambique. But bilaterally, honorable members, as we do with all the countries, we have exchange of views on national developments. Mozambique will brief us on their part. We do brief Mozambique on our own national developments in South Africa. And we do this respectful of each country's sovereignty, its territorial integrity. The questions were also raised about by Honorable Mhlongo about how to better manage the movement of people between the two countries. And I think it's not only between Mozambique and South Africa, the same would apply to Zimbabwe, the same is Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and those countries that are neighboring. This issue, firstly at the regional level, SADC has a vision to facilitate the free movement of people as well as to facilitate trade. The idea of one-stop border post is one of the flagship programs of SADC. And for South Africa, they have been taken as one of the important national projects. That border, Russia border post there, is quite important for both countries. And during the BNC, discussions ensued between between South Africa as well as Mozambique on what more should be done to ensure that it works seamlessly. We understand that the Department of Home Affairs announced that 6 one-stop border posts will be prioritized in the first phase to ensure that, because the idea of a one-stop border post is not only about people moving, it's also about goods, about facilitation of trade and enhancing regional integration. And so this issue was also discussed during the BNC, and that is why in December, the Minister of Transport as well joined her counterpart in Mozambique in one of the phases to modernize that port of entry. as the honorable member suggested, DECO coordinates this government-to-government relations, but we do bring, in the context of the BNC, all other departments, and at an appropriate time, those departments, I'm sure they can join us to respond to specific questions on what they are doing. For example, with Mozambique. Cross-border crime is an important issue that we feature in all our discussions, particularly with our neighbors, because there's a lot of cross-border criminal activities that are taking place. The issue of vehicles from South Africa being stolen, crossing over to Mozambique, was frankly raised with our counterparts in Mozambique. In fact, Minister Lamola directed during the BNC that a special session to discuss this particular issue, joint session, should be held between South Africa and Mozambique, because that issue was raised very sharply by senior officials as well as by our ministers about the high number of cars that are stolen from South Africa and crossing over to Mozambique, and also ensuring that there is efficient collaboration by law enforcement agencies on both sides, so that one, they are detected. Firstly, we should avoid them crossing over. But if they are the other side, there should be cooperation to detect where they are and to bring them back, because frankly, there was a challenge that in some instances when they are identified, it becomes difficult to bring them back to South Africa, because in Mozambique, there could be other laws, lengthy legal process to bring them back. That issue is even minuted in our agreed minutes on cross-border crime between the two countries as well. And we can provide more information to honorable members on that. We discussed during the BNC issues around anti-piracy operations that are there, that have been instituted between the two countries. For example, one of the decisions that were taken was that the BNC directed the two police authorities to establish by March 2026 permanent joint investigation structures and community policing forums on national, provincial, district levels to prevent and combat crimes along borders. We discussed theft and repatriation of motor vehicles. And for example, the BNC urged the two police authorities, supported by the trilateral planning cell, which has been established, to establish a bilateral task team by March 2026 to facilitate joint operations between the two. What South African police authorities have said to Mozambique, we need joint operations also into Mozambique. There was, in the beginning of 1994, 95, 96, an agreement which allowed our SAPS to go and join Mozambicans to do joint operations. We discussed human trafficking, for example. The BNC, for example, asked the two countries to continue sharing intelligence to curb human trafficking and smuggling of migrants, and to establish relationship with regional third countries by June 2026 to neutralize the transit routes. It was discussed during the BNC that some of these undocumented guests and visitors pass through countries before they reach South Africa. And South African ministers have raised that sharply to say, it can't be that people pass through several countries and land in South Africa. We need to discuss those issues. Whilst we recognize, and we discuss, frankly, the issue that honorable member raised correctly of push and pull factors, and that is why we support our companies investing in those countries, right? And we also engage sharply with those countries, our partners like Mozambique, to say, create conducive conditions for companies to be able to invest and expand their investments so that they create jobs, in order to avoid a situation where people have to leave countries to come to South Africa in search of greener pastures. The issue of drug trafficking was discussed, for example. Issue of trafficking of precious and non-ferrous metals and illicit goods. The BNC directed, for example, relevant services to continue sharing information to mitigate the struggling of precious, non-precious, non ferrous metals, illicit goods and services. The issue even of wildlife, for example, was also discussed. And there was a specific decision there where the BNC directed the relevant authorities to continue with operational activities to curb wildlife-related crimes. We discussed the security cluster during the BNC, discussed even kidnappings for ransom. That matter was discussed, but also the security cluster discussed new matters, for example, and considered a new MOU to be finalized on operational police matters, as well as on capacity building. So these issues were discussed. The report presentation to the committee tried to lift up largely economic-related matters, but it did not, the BNC discussed a whole range of issues, particularly from our side, on the issue of international crime and the extent to which it impacts on the well-being of South Africans. Honorable Chairperson, with your permission, I thought that I will, the other issues or comments have been raised, we could note them, and we can provide information that you may, the other information that is needed. In conclusion, as I said, this is one of the BNCs where the assessment of our principal was that it was focused, one, on largely economic issues, but it also focused on those issues which are concerned to South Africans, which impact on national security. The issue of criminality, cross-border crimes, those issues were discussed, quite frankly, during this recent. The issue of cooperation in water, at the time when we met, the crisis of flooding that we have experienced now was not anticipated, although we know that it would come. And I think this underscores a need to implement the decisions that we're taking, working together with SADC to avoid, in order to increase our response, emergency response capability. When there was a crisis in Mozambique, the first country that Mozambique called was South Africa. And we did engage with SADC to say, SADC, how do we, South Africa is assisting, but how do you mobilize the entire region to ensure that we are able to respond? And the shock, this center I'm talking about, holds with it a promise to build the capacity of the region to respond, assisted by SADC, because SADC is our entity, is our intergovernmental structure. And on issues which concern all of us collectively, that's where SADC should be able to come. Thank you, honorable members and honorable chair.
Thank you very much for the input and the responses. You will know, Honorable Sokolo, that the Portfolio Committee piloted an oversight model which is based on regions of the world when we started in the European Union, which was extraordinarily successful. All the ambassadors there, excluding the one who undermined both Parliament and the department from Germany, applauded the Portfolio Committee for the initiative. And as practitioners in geopolitics, they did say they think, coming from their own experiences, the committee must move forward with that approach. So our second leg of this regional approach is in SADC. We are landing in Mozambique around lunch next week, Tuesday, on the 3rd. So one of the things, no, not Mozambique, in Zambia, one of the things we are going to deal with is matters we have discussed here today. So we'll take them further when we are in Zambia, honorable members. These matters of trade between South Africa and Mozambique, we will be able to engage directly with the South African ambassador in Mozambique, in Zambia and Mozambique, and we will be able to also discuss with the neighboring countries that are there on mutually reinforcing approaches in as far as both matters of security and economy are concerned. So thank you very much, Ntate Sokolo. The other matters that you promised to send, which may be documents, statistical information with regard to gas and other matters and so on, I'm sure you will send them through to us through the administration. Otherwise, thank you very much. Give our greetings to the rest of the collective in DERCO. I want to thank you, honorable members, for always being incisive, decisive, forthright in your approach in as far as engaging the department is concerned. The staff of Parliament for having arranged this seamless transmission of the meeting between us and the department. South Africans who have been following the proceedings of this engagement on all the platforms that are provided by Parliament for South Africans to participate. The staff from DERCO, those who are part of the proceedings, lending their ears and their eyes so that they can synthesize some of the issues that are emanating as a consequence of questions from members of the portfolio committee. We also want to thank you. Lubabalo, do you want to make some announcements to members regarding Tuesday? There was a question, Lubabalo, over the weekend to me as to whether when we arrive in Zambia on Tuesday, because the program says we are going to a meeting directly, should members be formal, informal, or semi-formal? Those are some of the things I think you can do now so that members can prepare themselves between tomorrow and Monday. Luba?
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I think the first announcement is that we have all the political approval. We are busy now with the process of funding so that we can purchase all the tickets. I think by Friday, we will have all the information relating to flight details and all confirmations. And then for the meeting of Tuesday, Chair, semi-formal chair will be appropriate for the working dinner, Chairperson, at the High Commission's residence. Thank you, Chair.
And obviously members know that the weather of Zambia is the same as South Africa's weather, isn't it?
What I will do, Chair, I'll collect all that information, Chair, and post it on the group so that members are aware of the weather conditions from Tuesday until departure. Thank you, Chair.
All right, honourable members, this is how we come to the end of our first meeting in 2026 of the mandate and accountability session between us and Department of International Relations and Cooperation. Samayansin Tambani Kate, Moilop, Raleboka will meet on Tuesday at the airport or in Zambia. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. God bless.